I spent most of my time in that role as a key second assistant director. And basically I would take a script and I would rip it apart. I would know every nut and bolt. I'd know every sentence on every page, and I would make sure that everything was scheduled within an inch of its life. You enforce the operations of the set, the mechanics of the set every day. So every crew member, you knew exactly who they were, where they needed to be. Everyone had a daily schedule. Everyone had a weekly schedule. Everyone had a schedule for the next 3 months.
What happened if something went wrong?
There was no room for error. Like, it just couldn't happen. Things did happen where you had to move stuff around. Actors didn't become available. You'd have to move scenes around. You'd get wet weather. Something wouldn't be ready. You'd have to change the schedule. But you'd always foresee that. You'd look at the contingency.
You'd have it planned. If this happens, that happens.
100%. Yeah.
Can you describe to us what it's actually like making a movie? What are people like? What's the chaos? What's the drama?
It's not as glamorous as you think it is. It is a lot of fun, and the energy and the exhilaration, and it is right up there. You got to understand, you're spending, the production's spending $1 million a day, and I'm talking about Superman for instance, because it was one of the most expensive films ever made. For that film, it was $1 million a day because we had so much going on.
And so back to doing you're on the set of Superman, right? Is shit chaotic? What's it like?
You're on the set of Superman. You've got about 16 different departments working really, really closely together. You're looking at about 150 crew on set. You've got another 150 crew off set that are working, building sets for next week or next month or whatever. You've got special effects, you've got makeup, you've got actors, you've got art department, you've got standbys. It is one of the most amazing collaborative experiences you'll ever see, because you just watch these people who really, really know their shit. They know the script. They know exactly what needs to happen. They get in there, they get everything ready, and then there's a rehearsal and they step off, and then all of a sudden you've got someone in a cape landing off a flying rig. You've got wind effects. You've got leaves flying off a building. You've got a car blowing up in the background. You've got all sorts of stuff happening in that one moment to capture on film. And in the lead up to it, it feels a little bit chaotic because there's such a rush to get everything on time, because everything's scheduled within an inch of its life. So we know exactly what time we need to turn over, what time we need to finish this scene to move on to the next, to make the day. Because when you're spending $1 million a day, you start going into overtime. It's really, really expensive. And if you go into tomorrow's schedule, it impacts everything else. So everyone's like really, really busting a gut to get everything done as best they can and as perfectly as they can. So watching it unfold, it is an incredible experience.
It's kind of like hundreds of people becoming one single organism and just working in unison to create something that looks like chaos but then looks so beautiful, like Rocky.
Oh, exactly. And they're all really, really invested. They're invested in the story. They're invested in the project. You're talking about people that are, these days are scheduled 12-hour days.
What are the big actors like?
They're actually really great, mate.
Really?
Yeah, look.
They're not pains in the ass?
No, 95% of them are awesome. They're such professionals.
I want to hear about the 5%.
The 5% are fucking horrible.
Yeah, why? What do they do?
Fighting on set with other actors.
Fist fight?
Yeah. I've worked on a film where we actually couldn't have them on set. There were two of the biggest leads in the film, and 3/4 of the way through the film, or maybe half, they couldn't be on set together, so we had to use doubles. Over-shoulder double onto one lead and over-shoulder double onto the other. They had a massive fallout on set.
No way.
Purely because one of them was so into himself, and he was making his own documentary about himself and was turning up late, and it was a nightmare. It was an absolute nightmare.
That's pretty crazy. Anything else? That's a good one. Do you have another one?
Just being late, not turning up, sleeping in. Some of the most annoying things were, actors turning up to the trailer and then just going straight into bed. I'd call the unit manager and just say, get rid of the beds. Like, because we'd have those big, beautiful Winnebagos for them. They'd literally like just turn up and just go in there and just go back into bed, and you go, mate, no, you can't do that.
We're here to film.
And here I am, in there dragging this actor out of bed, kicking and screaming.
You
going,
are.
Yeah, get in the makeup chair. We've got work to do.
Do you ever get starstruck, or are you like, nah, man, just get over there?
Personally, I think I'm maybe 2 moments.
Who?
One of them was George Clooney.
Oh, yeah, I'd be pretty starstruck.
And
Handsome dude.
we only had him for like 2 weeks, and that was the first film I worked on, The Thin Red Line. And he came up to me and he looked at me and he goes, I like your eyebrows.
No, he didn't.
What? And he did this to my eyebrows. And he goes,
He touched him.
he goes, they're like mine. And then he walked away. And I was a bit like, oh my God, it's George Clooney.
George Clooney just rubbed my eyebrows.
Yeah. And he was awesome.
Is he a nice guy?
A lovely bloke.
Wow, yeah, I think he'd be
Yeah.
a nice guy.
Yeah.
And so how do you build a brand identity?
Look, you do it a lot with CUB. You've built incredible brand awareness with CUB, with everything that you do through Facebook, through Instagram, through the video content that you put out, through the podcast. All this is brand awareness. And it's just building the brand, but also being consistent and being true to your brand and making sure that you've got the right plan. You can't start here and then start doing something different down here and go up and down like this. Mm-hmm. When you start your brand awareness and you start your campaign, you want to work across a continuous line. So
it's a consistency thing.
Exactly.
It's very important building your brand.
So it's so important, because when you finally understand what your brand is and who you are, and you start getting people to connect with your brand and follow your brand, they're following it for a reason. If you start going off in different directions, then you're going to start losing your audience. Well, I did a couple of ads with Hungry Jacks, and like they're amazing, and the way they stick to the formula. And if you look at all those big brands, they're so consistent. McDonald's are consistent.
Yes.
And they've got so many people making sure that the consistency is upheld. Everything from the design of the ad all the way through to me in production.
That's a very good point. All the big companies, they focus so much on consistency, and that's something that smaller businesses do not do.
No.
Consistency is key.
And as much as you think you should be following what everyone else is doing, you got to step back and you got to look at your brand and go, right, is that me? Because if it's not me, then I shouldn't be doing it, because you're going to piss off your audience. You're going to piss off your following. You're going to go, right, okay, do something different, but do it within your brand. Don't go outside. Don't deviate too far out, because you're going to get off track.
And how do you know what's within your brand?
I think that's where collaboration comes in. I think you start to notice if you're outside your brand identity when your messaging is a little bit confused. And I think every business owner knows that. I knew that a few years ago, that the message that we were giving to some of our, potential clients wasn't quite right. And we went to an external source to sort that out, because within your own business, it's hard to remove yourself from, what you think is right. And, at the end of the day, that's why I think collaboration is still king. Definitely.
And so with Hungry Jacks, the process, they came to you, they said, hey, we want a commercial. What do they tell you? What type of things would a brand say to you?
Well, that was through an advertising agency. So a lot of that was already sorted out before I got there.
Okay. Yeah, because you're doing the actual production.
Exactly, yeah. So for me, it was executing the TV commercial. And there were a lot of guidelines. There were a lot of guidelines that needed to follow. They wanted to deviate too far.
Such as?
Set, colour, temperature, tone, music, messaging.
Speed of burger rotation.
Well, they hired me because a lot of the food stuff that I had done before was different, and they wanted to elevate their food porn, for instance, to a new level. And that's the reason why I got hired.
So you actually have a bit of a reputation in the food space.
Yeah.
Then.
You're putting out content, and you've got to think of the audience first. What do you think that they want to hear first? And you've got to completely remove yourself. And this is where a lot of people actually get stuck. You got to completely remove yourself from your brand and look at it from the outside. And I see this with a lot of organizations where they're so much into their brand, and they think that they know exactly what their potential clients want to hear. But everything that they've written comes from a personal place. You got to understand the audience don't have a personal relationship with your brand at all.
That's a really interesting thought. Yeah, you got to completely. It's not what you want to say. It's what your audience, what your target market wants to hear.
Exactly. Yeah. What's going to work for them? How are you going to help them? How are they going to benefit from your service or your product? It's hard for even myself to do that in my own organization. And that's why collaboration and working with people outside your organization works well. That's a formula that works well. That's why companies go to companies like ours, go to advertising agencies, for them to look at their brand from the outside, rip it apart and go, right, we've done the market research, we've looked at the analytics, we've looked at your brand, and this is how we think it's best to communicate based on how the audience is going to respond.
Then the next step is hook them straight away. What's the first thing they want to hear?
Exactly.
And that's important because if you don't catch them, right, they're not listening to the rest anyway. So you may as well grab them real quick. And so really it's kind of like what's going to make your target market say, okay, I want to hear more.
100%. And look, a perfect example is that I saw an ad recently on air for, I can't remember which bank it was, but it was about home loans. And the first few words were finding it hard to get a home loan. Straight away, I knew exactly who they were targeting. It was communicating directly to an audience for that reason. And then from there, the rest of the ad explained what they need to explain.
And also the people, everyone that's finding it hard to get a home loan is like, I actually am. I'm easily
Exactly. I'm
That's me.
Yeah, I'm listening.
Yeah.
You got my attention.
You could even be a little bit more like for CUB, it could be, are you an accomplished entrepreneur?
Exactly.
I'd be like, I'll keep listening because that's me.
Yeah.
I mean, it's almost like calling out to the person that you want to call out to.
That's right.
Yeah?
Yeah.
So grab your attention, why you should know about us, how we do that for you.
This is how we can help.
And then the end is like it's like you tie the ribbon, the bow, it's finished. It's,
Exactly. We'll make it better for you. We're here to make your life better.